Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, good. And you?
Doing all right.
Hi, team.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, Par. Welcome.
Hello. It's nice to meet you, actually. I just realized we've probably been talking to each other for the Tecton Spire stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you finally in person, face to face.
Nice to meet you. So where are you based, Par?
I'm in the near the east in the US.
Okay. Cool. Good morning.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's still drinking their coffee on this side.
Oh, it's already very past. Yeah, it looks like August. I'm missing some of the other SIG event folks. But okay, let me. Hopefully you can see the agenda for today. And yeah, so just letting everyone know the meeting is recorded, and then the recording will be shared on the CD Events YouTube channel. Yeah, so the only thing we had in the agenda for today, I didn't add more things because I was hoping to see Jamie from Fidelity. He was going to present how they use cloud events in their platform, their environment. But I don't see Jamie today, so I don't know. Maybe he wasn't able to attend. But Michael, are you talking? Or?
So a quick question on this. What is the difference between cloud events versus the CD events? This is the first time attending the meeting, so I think it would be good to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. As we don't have any plan agenda, I think it's we can just do you can do an introduction and maybe we can do a roundtable later. So cloud events is a Cncf project that basically defines a standard format for the envelope.
Yep.
So how you transport the message, right? So, and the cool thing with cloud events is that you don't have to decide early what kind of messaging protocol you want to use in your application.
Mhm.
As long as you're using the cloud events format, then you have an option of several bindings that you can use that are specified.
Mhm.
So you can decide to transport your messages over HTTP or over Kafka, over NATS, over MQTT. I think there are a few bindings available. So that's what cloud events is about. So, but cloud events doesn't tell you anything about the content, so the data that you have in the payload. So what CD events is about the content, and for the basically software life cycle, it wants to give you a standard for transporting CI/CD events, basically, and we do that on top of cloud events because we thought it makes sense. It's used already in some of the tooling in CI/CD space, like Captain, Tecton.
Yeah.
There is a plugin for Jenkins, so it made sense to use that envelope. So that's the difference.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay. So I think the difference is basically it's like I'm just understanding it. Is that you want to be able to send events so that you can trigger other things in your CI/CD pipeline. Basically, let's say, so for example, like the thing I'm trying to do is like we're trying to collect runtime visibility logs, basically, right? So for example, the syscalls, all those kind of things that are happening within the build system within your CI/CD, right? So having that, like let's say Tecton, like having Tecton be able to trigger, be like, hey, I want to start collecting logs on a specific task run or a pipeline run, right? Collect everything, all the different pods that are getting spun up. I want to collect all the logs on those things, and then maybe create an attestation from them. So that would be possible with this. Is that a kind of a use case?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So if you want to, if you have a pipeline, like you said, and you want to trigger other actions, that's definitely, and because like no single tool will cover your entire set of needs.
Exactly.
You'll have multiple tools, and you don't want to reinvent every functionality in every single tool. I mean, you have tools that are specialized to some things well, and so that's the idea. You can use event for connecting tools that way. The other use case, I guess it's similar in a way, but it's about collecting metrics, so Devops metrics. So if you have multiple tools that you use and you're creating changes in your source code, you're running builds, creating artifacts, you're deploying those artifacts, you're recording incidents in production, those kind of events. I'm referring to the DORA metrics if you're familiar with those. And you have multiple tools generating those events. And if you collect all these events from the different platforms, then you can use these events to keep track on how well you're doing in terms of DORA metrics, how often you're running your deployments, how often you have incidents in production. And you can do that having like a standard format. I mean, you can do that today having events from the different tools, but they come in a different formats. So at least having a common language there helps. We hope that it will, foster kind of tools that can do that for you out of the box.
That makes sense.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. I don't know where I am, but hello. Is it over here? Okay.
You see the sofa? We can see the picture on the wall.
I know, but it doesn't. Okay, I'm easily amused. I'm sorry. I'm cracking up that that's happening right now.
Okay, good to have you, even if you are invisible.
There I am.
Oh, there you are.
That was a cool trick.
How do you do that?
It was I don't know. I have no idea actually. I had to reset the camera.
All right. Yeah, so originally the plan for today was to have a presentation by Jamie, but he's not here, so I think we will postpone to next time. So Jamie is going to present at some point how they use cloud events in their CI/CD platform, basically. And Fidelity is interested in, as they're heavily relying on cloud events, they're interested in CD events. But yeah, I won't say more. I think I'll let Jamie do the presentation when he's available. Yeah, so that was the main thing that we had on the agenda. But since I see a lot of new faces, I think maybe it makes sense to make a roundtable to introduce ourselves. Right. Well, I can start. My name is Andrea Fritzoli. I'm a developer advocate at IBM, and I'm the co-chair of the SIG events here, and I'm also on the Cdf TOC, and recently joined the board as a maintainer representative, Cdf board. And yeah, I care a lot about interoperability, also as part of the TOC. And yeah, so that's why I joined the interoperability group first, and then started working on setting some common format for events in CI/CD. So that's my interest here. Maybe I just go through the list in the order I see it. Parth, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, hello, my name is Parth. Usually part of the Cncf attack security, so we're doing a lot of things there. Also part of a new startup called Kusari. We're also focusing on secure supply chain. So we're kind of building out a lot of the things and tools, and the CD events makes a lot of sense. We're trying to see if there are ways that we can utilize events to trigger specific things, and I think this is exactly fits the use case. So basically in the Cncf the attack security stuff, we've been working on the reference architecture. So we've been using a lot of Tecton pipelines, Tecton chains, filling in the gaps that we see in terms of SALSA, right? So we're trying to achieve SALSA with a lot of these tools that are out there. So especially at the higher levels, trying to fill in the gaps where it needs to be, and then utilizing other open source tools like Spire. So I think so I'm glad to be here, trying to learn more about how CD events kind of fits in and how we can utilize it in the, especially to achieve, supply chain security and SALSA in the future.
Ooh. Thanks. Michael or Mikael, I'm not sure, sorry.
Yeah, no, Mike is also fine. So yeah, I'm also at Kusari, startup trying to do, secure build and those sorts of things. Also doing a lot of work with the CNCF. Up until recently was the co-chair of the financial services user group. I'm now also a tech lead at the security tag. And doing a lot of stuff on that front. So I was one of the leads on the Cncf Secure Software Factory Reference Architecture, which Fatih participated a little bit in those conversations as well. And so also the lead on the OpenSSF Fresca, which is a tool that we've been building out that utilizes Tecton chains, Spire, Vault, and a bunch of other tools to kind of build the more holistic package of a secure build. That's under the OpenSSF. Also, doing stuff with SALSA on the steering committee for SALSA. And so a lot of, I have a lot of shared interest with Parth there, but I think a lot of also where I'm coming from is trying to also see where we can collaborate as a community to make sure that as a lot of this work also gets done, that different groups can go in and leverage some of this work. So there's obviously a lot of interesting stuff coming out of the OpenSSF and as well as CNCF. And hey, can we start to build more CD events integrations in some of these OpenSSF and CNCF tools so that we can then leverage it more? that's where a lot of where I'm coming from, and then also obviously, probably interested in some of the other upcoming meetings throughout the CD Foundation.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
I'll go next.
Tracy. Yeah.
I am Tracy Reagan. I am CEO of Deploy Hub, also a small company that has been involved in the CDF since its inception. I'm also on the board of the Open SSF. I am the board member rep, and I am on the CDF TOC. Deploy Hub is a central hub for storing what I like to call DevOps intelligence, including SBOM data. We have an open source project that's part of the CDF called Ortelius, and I'm happy to report that over the last 3 weeks, Ortelius got a $75,000 grant from Ripple XRPL to do a POC for creating immutable SBOMs and for every component that is created. So we're pretty excited about that. We'll see where it leads.
Cool, and congrats for the grant.
Thanks, it was fun.
Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. I'm Tim Miller. I complete the trifecta of people working at Kusari with Mike and Parth. So I won't bore you too much. I'm working with them. Happy to be here.
Cool, welcome, team. And Brett, I'll get you next on the list.
So I'm Brett Smith. I have recently started coming to CDF meetings. We're looking SaaS. I work for SaaS, which is an analytics company. If you swipe your credit card and it gets denied for fraud, it was probably us. If it gets frozen because someone spends $2 in Minneapolis and you're not there, it's probably us. We're an ISV, so we still ship software to customers. So I've got a pipeline that builds RPMs, Debian packages, containers, starballs, all kinds of stuff. And we recently, about 3 years ago, we decided to go full CI/CD. So we built out an event-driven system. My events are cloud event spec. And so I'm pretty excited about this CDF event spec. My pipeline is also asynchronous. So if you can imagine the chaos it can cause by just going and doing random things whenever it feels, when there's an event, triggers a bunch of stuff. And I'm pretty proud of it. Basically, what we did is we used the cloud event spec, and then we have a payload, which is a CNAB spec, because I wanted to be able to replay all the actions that the event represented. And then inside of the CNAB, there's a custom section where we put our SaaS specific data for stuff that didn't fit into the CNAB. So I'm pretty familiar with what you guys are up to. Got this audit trail that goes with the events. So in order to create an event, you have to post a receipt of what you did, and that triggers the event. And then we have all these little Go microservices waiting for the event to hit the bus, and then they go and do stuff, whether it's triggered Jenkins jobs or update databases or whatever they do. There's a lot of that type of stuff. So I'm excited to be here. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, pretty cool, Brett. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, I could probably do a presentation at some point for you. I wasn't prepared for today because you guys had stuff on the agenda, but all I gotta do, I gotta go talk to my legal team and make sure that they're cool with it.
Yeah, that would be great. Actually, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be brilliant, Brett. So that's definitely, it sounds like a really good fit with what we're doing. And probably, you have a few years more experience doing it than us. So I'm sure there are a lot of things we could learn from your presentation.
Yeah, and then I'm very interested in the SBOMs because currently I'm trying to implement Salsa, and I got to support the executive order of the United States.
Yeah.
So I've got a bunch of work going on around SBOMs and storing SBOMs and creating SBOMs and how do I retrieve SBOMs. And then I have a problem of I don't work for a software we have a software as a service offering, but I still have to deliver these binaries to customers. And so I have to figure out how to, keep the SBOM closely with the binary so that I can have it when it's time to turn it in, to give it to the customer. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about all this stuff. So thank you.
Thanks. Vibhav, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, so I'm Vibhav. I worked at a company called Uffizi. We do test previews, and I'm open source integrations engineer, which is basically open source sales, if you think about it. And my day-to-day includes just like going to different repos and integrating Uffizi. Uffizi is very interested in CD events and integrating with CD events. And I have contributed to CD events in the past. And I'm also a contributor in Tecton. It's nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Vibhav. Okay. Yeah, so like to make best use of this time together. So I was wondering if there are any questions or any specific topic on CD events that you guys would like to bring up for today. We can have some open discussion on it.
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Percy.
I want to talk about that reference architecture.
Yeah, the CDF one or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the CDF reference architecture. Maybe I'm just thick right now, or maybe because I had COVID. I just got over COVID. I know, I'm fine. Steve and I both got it. We went to a bar. Steve got it and brought it home, and then I got it. I've been looking at that reference architecture and looking at it, and I cannot really understand it and wrap my head around it. And I believe that part of what they're going to, the challenge would be, and for those of you who don't know it, there's a proposal to create what is being returned a reference architecture, with the goal of providing a way for people who may not be completely mature in their CD pipeline to go and say, I'm trying to do deployments. What are the tools I should be looking at? From a CDF point of view, we have to be careful about not being, we have to be vendor neutral. So any tools that we create, we really can't be saying, go use Spinnaker, for example. It would be a bad thing for us to do that. So they would have to somehow map it back to the landscape. If you haven't looked at the landscape is can be challenging. But what I really think we need to do is collaborate with them on vocabulary. Because when I look at what we've done on the vocabulary front, I feel like it really should be mapping back to the vocabulary, and the vocabulary is defining what these things are, as opposed to looking at it from saying these are the tool sets you should use. It should be, this is the vocabulary you should be looking at, and then our events would be, these are the events in this vocabulary. So I just wanted to know if anybody else is kind of trying to wrap their head around it now, because I was supposed to be in bed rest and all I was doing was laying in front of my computer reading stuff. I probably had more time to think about it, but just Andrea, what are your thoughts on it? And do you think that we can help them and drive them to our vocabulary meetings?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the idea of the architecture is to be like tool agnostic. So like you said, I mean, we are a foundation, so we should not like say you should use this tool or that tool. But I think the idea is to give a framework of thoughts, like what are the concepts that we talk about in CI/CD, and how do they relate to each other. And I think this is quite close to what you're talking about with the vocabulary. So, I mean, putting together the work that the best practices and the interoperability SIG, and here in the SIG events we're doing basically, but in a more like coherent framework. I think that's
and broader, because our vocabulary, we really never completed the vocabulary. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done on that.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I'm just trying, I feel like there's got to be some sort of a partnership, right, between the interoperability, what we're doing on the vocabulary, and what they're calling the reference architecture. I feel like sometimes we get splintered, and when we do that, everybody goes in their own corners and does their own thing. And on this one, I feel like maybe we should be reaching out from our vocabulary perspective and say, we want to be sure that this is, we're driving that vocabulary back to what the events would be in that vocabulary. And that then defines what the tools would be who've already has defined events. There's motivation there on my part to say, it would be great to get more people writing events, right? Or being part of that event conversation. So how do we keep driving them back to the idea of events? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to mature people's CD pipelines. If it's easy to do all the interoperability and get rid of the plugins.
Yeah, I see.
Do we have a link to share our, where's our vocab? For those of you who are new, I think the vocabulary is a really good place to start. Let me see if I can find something on, I don't think that there really is anything out there on the reference architecture discussion. The vocabulary isn't yet,
I've seen the slides for the reference architecture, or at least the reference architecture proposal.
Well, I saw the slides too, but that didn't help me, to be quite honest. And I hate to be,
yeah.
I was just like, okay, it's got these 4 little boxes going into the reference architecture, going into the products, but I was struggling. And Terry knows I was. I reached out and told him I'm not getting it.
Yeah, as just a quick aside though, I think one of the things that I know from the Cncf and OpenSSF we'd love to do in a collaborative fashion is sort of help coordinate and help collaborate on some of that, just so that you know, given that, for example, the Cncf has created a reference architecture of how to do secure builds in the in cloud, like Kubernetes. Hey, what can we do from our end to make sure that as the CD event stuff starts to come up, how can we start to integrate that into like the next generation of that reference architecture and so on?
And it's I believe the answer is going to be through that vocabulary. It's what does that, you know, what does that mean? And there's another area, a whole area of, you know, policies and compliance levels that we could be building into that would further define that reference architecture. All right, where is it? I'm trying to find that vocabulary CD foundation.
Right, there are a few different things, right? That there is the Rosetta Stone, which is the initial work that was done to kind of see how different tools name different things. And I think the vocabulary is an attempt to define like recommended best names for things, and this is what we use then in CD events as a reference. And there is currently some work as well to kind of define standard names for pipeline stages. And that's something that we discussed as part of CD events, as well as something we should align with. Let me see if I can.
So even what they're doing on the OpenSSF side, it makes sense to start aligning that back into our vocabularies.
So I got a couple of quick points on the reference architecture because I believe, Tracy, this is the second time I've heard you go through and say we need to be careful and be vendor neutral, which I agree with. I will say that so when we started the CI/CD with the event-driven architecture, I had a lot of trouble explaining to even the team that I was using to build it out what event-driven meant, and having a concrete example really would help in that understanding, because it took me probably it probably took me a year after the system was live to train the rest of the company on what you could do with it and what was the right way to use it and what was not the right way to use it. You know, you give developers a way to create stuff and they immediately do crazy stuff like base 64 a giant YAML file and try and jam it in your receipt system. And you know, I also had a guy that, you know, I said, look, these events, they've got actions on them that trigger other things so that your watcher will catch this action and go do what it's supposed to do, and it'll ignore the messages that are not for it. And I had a guy who set the action for his receipt to be the action that his watcher was watching for, and he fork bombed himself, ended up with a 97 megabyte receipt until his watcher crashed. So there's a lot of stuff that we can learn from my follies here. But having a concrete example and being able to go into a meeting with a nice diagram and go, and this is what it is, and have it be stuff that maybe is pretty not industry standard, but at least everybody's kind of familiar with. That would really help with our long-term adoption, I think, and our explaining what events are and what we can do with them.
Exactly, and to your point, Brett, I don't think that everybody at the CD Foundation on the board or even on the TOC really understands what this team has been trying to do. I've been sort of an inside, you know, cheerleader, for lack of a better word, I guess, inside evangelist, saying, hey, this is really the way that we, this is the wave to come in CD technology. Look, I mean,
Right.
Captain's a fabulous tool. There's another little one that I'd like to see be added as an open source project to the CD Foundation, which is called Directive. We've had demos here on Directive. It's, you literally, if you wanted to open your garage door and start your coffee, you could do it with their event-driven platform.
I'm afraid of robots that
yeah.
do that type of stuff.
So I think that I think you're right. I think that there is still, we did a white paper with an effort of trying to make it easier to understand. Is that right? Did I check that white paper in? I probably didn't. I probably did not. What did we do with it?
We have it on the CD Foundation website. We don't have it in Git yet, I think. Let's see.
We probably should get the final Word doc version of it, or whatever it was written, whatever we put it in finally.
So like a couple other things that I've learned over the years of doing this. So we already had Kafka in place. So we just used Kafka. If I had a shot to redo that, I would have probably used Red Panda because it's faster. But had I done that, I would have ended up killing one of my other objectives, which is to go to cloud providers for stuff. And so we are now using the Confluent Cloud, which gives us Kafka, and it's someone else's problem to manage the cluster. So yeah, there's some takeaways here, you know, that
okay, so you made a jump. You made a jump that I couldn't jump with you on. How is Kafka Red Panda associated to our events?
So Red Panda is a drop-in replacement for Kafka written in C, and it takes the JVM problem out of your, like, Kafka.
Oh, okay.
We run Kafka on-prem, and you know, Java is just, Yeah, gosh, don't use Java anymore,
Yeah.
please.
For Java, okay, all right, for speeding up Java is what you're saying.
Yeah, and for increasing message sizes, like we can only have a 1 megabyte message on the Kafka bus on our in-house support, on-prem run Kafka, because honestly, every time we've tried to increase the message size, we knock the instances over.
Yeah,
And
okay.
then, and so we're moving to the cloud, because everything's we're doing is moving to the cloud. We're moving to Azure and stuff. And so using Confluent Cloud makes it easier to access, from an Azure instance. So, but anyway, if I had to do it now, I would do Red Panda.
So I think that what we might want to work on is making sure that internal to the CD Foundation, folks like Terry understand what we're doing. And if they're going to start working on this reference architecture, we make sure that we are in there asking them to contribute back to our vocabulary. And that's how that reference architecture would be built.
Right. Oh, that was the other point I had that, like lost. Naming is hard. Right. And so the vocabulary part of this is really important,
Yeah.
because we ended up abusing certain terms to the point where you almost can't talk without saying the word 4 times in a sentence, and it means 4 different things.
Exactly.
And so I think the vocabulary is very important, and then being able to classify like the Kafka Red Pandas into this is your message bus, or this is your event bus, or whatever words we're going to use. Being able to classify these tools could help us with we're not recommending you use Kafka or Red Panda, but these fit this category of our reference. And here's the reference model. Here's the categories for the reference model, right, of vocabulary pieces. And then here's an example of what you could use in there.
Yeah, exactly. And in my understanding, that what the reference architecture should be about, like giving common way to reason about concepts of part of the architecture. Like, okay, this is what we call a message bus. This is what we call a CD pipeline. These are like standard stages that you may have in a CD pipeline. Your build stages is these, and so forth and so forth. Rather than it will give a framework that then tools can use to say, okay, well. This, I don't know, the Red Panda open source community can say, in this architecture, we cover this area, and in our roadmap, we plan to extend to these other terms, and the term or Tecton can go and say, okay, well, we cover this type of functionality in this reference architecture if you want. And the same can do open source tool, but the same can do also product vendors or, service offering companies like this. Cloud offerings and so forth. They think if they have a reference architecture, they can say, okay, well, these are the things that we implement, because there is a reference architecture. It's clear what you're talking about. It's not like everyone means different things in terms of how they fit together. That's my understanding at this stage. But I think there is still a lot to be fleshed out of exactly what we mean. So I think I feel your concern, Tracy, that we need to, make sure that we go in the right direction. I definitely agree that any word that we do in the reference architecture should fit back into the vocabulary, or be anyway. I see it as a way to kind of making sure that the different SIGs are working more together, as opposed to starting something different that goes away and far from the work that we're doing in the SIGs.
So I finally found this white paper. I'm going to download it. I'm going to attach it as and there we go. There you are. Can't I attach a doc?
I
Guess
don't know, but
not.
you can attach a link. But
Oh, gosh.
I put a link to the blog post where the white paper is attached to
Okay,
in the notes. So
there it is in the chat. I feel like we get, we put that together really, really quickly. We probably could expand on, maybe that's something that we could continue working on. I feel like if we put it in Markdown and put it out there instead of as a cleaned up white paper, that maybe it could be broadened, or I'm not sure. I just don't know how we can educate people within our existing TOC so they really understand what we're trying to do. Because sometimes when I listen, I just don't feel like we're getting our message across. But that could be just me.
If it makes you feel any better, it was pretty clear to me what you guys are up to.
That does make me feel better. Maybe you've thought about it though. If somebody hasn't thought about it, like you said, did you say it took you almost a good year to really get people to start thinking about how a pipeline can be built in a different way?
Yeah, it was yeah, it was a year of, basically I felt like it was a year of touring around and explaining the same thing in a different way over and over again until everybody got it. Now I have a little bit bigger audience than some people do. I mean, I don't know how many developers you guys have. I got about 2,000 to 2,500 developers that I had to go kind of explain how this works to. So it was pretty interesting.
Well, we have the entire world, so let's just put it that way.
I guess you have more than I do.
These are concepts we're trying. These are new concepts we're trying to educate people on. And in the discussions that we had around this reference architecture, and I've done this for a long time, and I've never seen one best practice. I believe there are good practices, but there's not one best practice. And the idea that we could create a best practice for anybody, I feel like is incorrect. Because there's so many different variations of companies and what they need to do and what they need to add and their own requirements. So the reference architecture is going to have to keep that in mind. And that's why I kept going back, but I was trying to put it is how do we do that? Is the best way we do it is to map it to the vocabulary. And I honestly think that the vocabulary then should map back to the landscape. Now, most of you don't know this, but I published the initial landscape. I think it's gone through some iterations, but it was not easy to publish that initial landscape. First of all, it was really hard to work with the code. I had to get Steve to save me a few times because I got too deep in dashes. But just to categorize that kind of data is extremely hard. And as I was watching the vocabulary, because I didn't really contribute much, I was watching it and reading it, I was starting to learn how we could think about these different groups in a better way. The problem with the landscape and the problem with potentially a reference architecture is all of us as tool vendors, we want to be, let's say, for example, I'll just use Ortelius and Deploy as an example. We certainly can do deployments. We have a deployment engine. It's not our primary focus. Our primary focus is gathering the data. We manage SBOMs. We don't generate them. We consolidate them. We aggregate lower level SBOMs to application levels. We can register microservices and compete with something like a Backstage. But how in the reference architecture, in the landscape, we can only identify ourselves as one feature. So what feature, where do we fit? Catalogs aren't right now. There's like 4 or 5 catalogs on the market. So where do we fit? So anything that's static is dangerous, right? And the landscape is somewhat static because you can put yourself in one place and you may not even have a category for it. But if I could have identified ourselves in terms of vocabulary and where we fit into a vocabulary about what's being done, it would have been easier. Not in terms of a category, but a discussion.
I agree.
I haven't looked at, I haven't looked at that landscape in a long time. After I didn't have to touch it anymore, I didn't say a word about it because I was so happy not to deal with it. It's got to be, there's an interactive landscape. It's nothing like the challenge of the CNCF, but definitely it's got some work. So if you look at that, let's say you want to put yourself in a category, you have to identify what your primary feature is. So right now, Ortelius is in configuration management because there's not a better place for it. It's a terrible category. And does this landscape map back to our vocabulary? Probably not. And that's where the reference architecture's got to come from. So maybe my thought is that maybe we as the events team take a stab at this landscape in terms of our vocabulary and make some recommendations on how it can be changed. The way it was written is you can only be in one box. The big boxes are open source projects. The little boxes are anyone. You don't have to be a member of the CD Foundation to be part of it. It's just where your tool fits into the landscape.
Yeah, I think we inherited that tool from the CNCF.
Yeah, well, it was, I took it from, Dan was still alive at the time when I wrote it, and he helped me bring over the code and start creating one for the CDF. So I took exactly what he already had in the CNCF landscape, and the way it's written is you can only be in one box. And that kind of makes sense, otherwise it would be worse than it is. If you look at the CNCF landscape and assume everybody could be in multiple boxes, you'd have a total disaster. It's hard enough as it is. But I feel like these high-level pipeline orchestration, continuous integration, test automation, those should be mapping back to the vocabulary that we're having. Or the discussion around vocabulary. I know this is a lot, but this is what I thought about while I was supposed to be on bed rest to get over COVID.
Yeah, I feel like you're onto something there. So there's definitely like there should be like consistency across the landscape and the vocabulary and whatever work we do in terms of reference architecture. So at least
right. So the reference architecture could then relate back not to a specific product, but a specific grouping of the vocabulary. So you're going to need something, I don't know what the vocabulary would be for pipeline orchestration, but it would map to our vocabulary. And then you can select what you want inside here. But even with like the way it's defined now, I would say, for example, that Spinnaker is more of a release automation tool than it is a CD pipeline.
right. Yeah, I think sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
Everything we do goes back to the way we talk about this stuff is incorrect. It's the vocabulary that's broken.
Naming's hard. #1 computer science problem.
Yeah. Okay, I tried to capture the discussion, Tracy, but feel free to add to the notes if I missed any main thing.
I think you got it.
I think this is great input on this. If you are going to start the reference architecture, I think these are things that definitely we need to keep in mind. And in my understanding, at least, this is not like diverging from the idea, or at least to how I understood it until now. Yeah, so I definitely agree. We need like we can call it vocabulary. But yeah, so I think that the reference architecture should be aligned, or should use the vocabulary to refer to different components, and then those can be mapped to specific tools. And if we can align the landscape website on that'd be great. I think that's something definitely that we should do.
So maybe we just bring it up at the next TOC meeting. I think that our first problem to solve both the events and the reference architecture and the landscape is that we need to have just a working group that is a common vocabulary between all three. Building upon the work you've already started. Not a SIG, just a working group, so we can get it defined. We don't need another SIG.
Does it make sense? Or across SIGs?
Yeah, across SIGs. And the landscape put in there. Because I really think that the reference architecture should eventually map back to the landscape, so that if you're a vendor and you weren't a part of this, you could go ahead and easily add yourself to the right vocabulary in the landscape, so that your event would be clearly defined and your role in the reference architecture would be clearly defined, and it would be somewhat dynamic. It would be dynamic because you could add yourself. Now, the rule about one, only being in one box is a whole different discussion, but that doesn't have to be, that can be discussed as part of the vocabulary. Like Spinnaker,
Right.
It should be probably part of orchestration, and it should be in here under release automation as well.
Yeah, I mean, specifically for the landscape, I feel like you said, it makes sense to have like a single box for the overarching view, but it would be good to be able to, tag the different tools in relation with functionality they can provide, even if it's not the primary. So like say, like if you want to say, I want to filter all the tools that they have some SBOM capabilities, and you could see them all, and you don't need to have like an SBOM block in the main landscape where you see every tool, because like if some tool has SBOM capability, but it's not their primary capability, you don't want to see it in the SBOM box, but you still maybe want to be able to see that they can, what are all the tools that can provide SBOM capabilities. It's just an example. I'm not sure SBOM is the best example.
It's a great example, because some tools are going to generate SBOMs, some of them are going to be consumers and provide a higher level reporting on SBOMs. But it's still it's addressing the SBOM issue.
Right.
It's not an easy task to solve, but I don't feel like we could move another step forward without addressing a common vocabulary between us all. I just don't. It just doesn't seem like it's practical. Oh, and I think I missed an Artilius open source call, but that's okay. Oh, that's right. We canceled them in August.
Right. So about the working group to define vocabulary across SIGs. So we have a TOC call tomorrow. I won't be able to join tomorrow, unfortunately. Do we want to bring a proposal to the TOC? Shall we start working on a document for that, Tracy? Or what do you think?
You mean for the working group? I'm sorry, I just got distracted for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Let me try to put together. When is our next TOC meeting?
It's tomorrow, but I won't be there.
Didn't we just have one?
I think we had an extra one to catch up because we missed one
Oh,
or something
and
like that.
we had Persia on the topic. Okay, let me see if I can write something up, or at least reach out to, is Terry on the TOC? Do you know, Andrea? Is Terry Cox there?
He was last time. I'm not
But is
sure.
he a member? Let me see if I can find him between now and then and see if I can quickly touch base with him today. I would like to bring it up to him first. I don't want to catch him off guard. I think he's too invested in it, and I want to respect the work he's done. Does anybody have his email? I'll get it. I'll find him.
I probably have it. I can send it to you if I find it.
Okay. Let me see if I can reach out to him, because I think he's in the UK, which means it's already late there. But I can send him an email and let him know we're going to bring it up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. A lot of interesting discussion today. So we only have 3 minutes left. But I just wanted to say I definitely would like to see topics like associated with the OpenSSF, SBOM, and so forth supported in CD events. And we don't have anything in that area yet. But it's not because we don't want to.
I definitely think
Ortelius has some stuff, but we don't generate them. That's the thing. We're not going to generate SBOMs. We only consume them. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to add to our events.
Yeah, I think from the CNCF and OpenSSF perspective, I can definitely demo some things and show off what we're looking to do and where we think CD events would be really useful, right? Because like as an example, right, we have the Cncf Secure Software Factory Reference Architecture, which is essentially just a, hey, here's what a secure build would look like in like the Kubernetes universe, the cloud universe. And I think a lot of the stuff that's described there is when people look at implementations, there's a lot of components that we would imagine would be communicating over using stuff like CD events so that folks can sort of build out the secure software factory that they need based on, whatever tools, that would be used there. So I think we can demo some stuff there. We're actually, it's interesting that you brought some of this stuff up because some of these things are things that we've also been talking about in Fresca, which Fresca is an OpenSSF tool that I'm leading, and some of us here are contributors to, which utilizes Tecton and all those other things to sort of build out a secure build. But one of the things that has been missing is like, hey, as we do some of this stuff, a lot of it, we want to sort of transform this into more of that event-driven CI tool, CI/CD tool, where you can plug in new security tools and yada yada as you need to, and based on the event-driven nature of it, as these things kind of come in, you can go and say, like as Parth mentioned, okay, cool, we're doing runtime visibility based on events that come in. If you don't have runtime visibility, that's okay. You just don't perform that action or whatever, and then be able to then tie that all back into stuff like Salsa and some of the supply chain security pieces so that we can apply policy against some of this software that's being built and deployed out. We can go and say, great, you've done all, we have events that potentially themselves are attestations at some level, right? We have signed metadata coming out of all these various tools like the SBOM generation and all these other things. Great, then we can go and verify the policy and ensure that only things get deployed to production that are whatever, right? Oh, Andrea, if you're talking, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, thanks. I was asking whether that's what I put in future presentation is the right spelling for the tool that you were mentioning. Is that Fresco or is it
Oh,
Or
it's so it's FRSCA. So yeah.
RSCA. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to complement my notes, then for
Sure.
future presentation, that'd be great. Sorry, I'm really terrible at taking notes and listening at the same time. But yeah, I think it would be really great to see that in this group, and I would really like to see, how we can collaborate and that make sure that city events goes in a direction that is useful for those groups, for you guys. So we've been driving the development of city event through POCs, proofs of concepts and demos, and currently working on a demo to build, basically to collect DORA metrics for city events. And yeah, it would be great to build more, integrating with Cncf, Ref Architecture, OpenSSF, or Fresca. Yeah, that'd definitely be cool.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So I know we are over time. Just very quickly, very briefly, I just wanted to say, I mean, August is probably relatively quiet in terms of SIG's attendance, but we are around and all our meetings are recorded. So if you think you have time for doing a presentation, feel free to add like a tentative date and put it in the agenda directly. And then we can make sure that, yeah, we don't have conflicts, but yeah, as long as they are in the agenda, we know, and then I think it would be great to see this. Cool. Yeah, thanks for attending, everyone, today. Great to meet everyone, and until next time then.
Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.